É nóis!
Hum.
Chegando na rede social! Que delícia entrar ao vivo tantos anos, a gente já pode falar em anos, né? E esperar encontrar todos aqui para a gente compartilhar esse momento único de escutar histórias fabulosas, reais e muito intensas, profundas mesmo. Tem um significado especial para a gente. As histórias com Osho, esse mestre incrível que veio para transformar vidas em amores. Boa noite, Sufi.
Boa noite, Amina. A
Yeah!
gente está aqui de volta, mais uma terça, 3 anos e meio já de histórias com Osho, né? Que delícia. Esperando as pessoas entrarem, como a gente sempre faz, né? As pessoas levam um pouquinho. Prashanto acabou de entrar aqui. Oi, Prashanto,
Toma!
boa
Eu
noite.
vou fazer os compartilhamentos aqui.
Isso, vai compartilhando aí enquanto a gente vai esperando, vai dando boa noite aos nossos amigos que estão entrando aos pouquinhos. Hoje a gente vai passar uma entrevista bem bacana, marcante. Namastê, Prashanto. Então, respondendo aqui o recado dela. Oi, Jane. Linda noite para você também. Pessoal, a gente está esperando mais pessoas entrarem aos pouquinhos, enquanto a Dívia vai fazendo os compartilhamentos, eu vou começar a dar nossos recados,
Sim,
né? Primeiro, nossos agradecimentos à nossa querida equipe HcO, Miguel Fine, querido Miquel, querida Parita, a Catarina Lira, que faz os trabalhos de legendas. Temos uma nova integrante dos agradecimentos, que é a Gisele Catarino, que nos cedeu gentilmente a foto da arte de divulgação, que é uma foto do Petar, onde está a linda pousada Rancho da Serra. Como é que é? Onde é que é mesmo, Dívia?
fica no bairro da Serra, em Iporanga. Iporanga, conhecida como a capital das grutas, no Vale do Ribeira, bem no sul do estado de São Paulo.
Voltando.
Quem gosta de natureza é um prato cheio. Sabia, Bi, que é o maior contínuo de Mata Atlântica preservada do planeta?
É, que legal.
Vale.
Vamos todos conhecer a pousada Rancho da Serra em breve. Enquanto isso, a gente agradece a foto da Gisele Catarino, perfil @gi.aroundtheworld. Lá estão as fotos e trabalho fotográfico dessa querida que nos cedeu a sua fotografia para arte de divulgação. Também nossos agradecimentos aos grupos Facebook, quais são, Lívia?
Sem Fronteiras, Gabriel Sanambique, eu também. E Nelsânias, a Nova Realidade, Francisco Siqueira e equipe.
Em breve
Também
também,
o Caminho das Nuvens Brancas, do querido Satibode. Aqui é para Chanto que está coordenando agora.
pessoal, a gente também agradece as pessoas que nos apoiam com contribuições. A gente está precisando de doações para continuar. Então, quem puder nos dar uma força, qualquer quantia é muito bem-vinda. A Dívia deixa a chave Pix nos comentários fixos. Então,
Sim, sim.
o HCO
Trabalhos como
agradece.
esse que a gente vai apresentar aqui, vocês vão ver, é, a gente realiza, tem muito para realizar ainda, né? E isso tem custos, então envolve trabalho de legenda e tudo mais, então ajuda demais essa colaboração, tá bom?
Exatamente. A gente só chegou até aqui graças às pessoas que nos apoiam, que a gente sempre faz questão de agradecer. Agradecemos também a nossa sanguinha, É um grupo de
Que
pessoas
fica
que está sempre aqui
aqui.
assistindo com a gente.
Que delícia
A nossa
encontrá-lo.
madrinha, a Kilma. Querida Kilma, que deve estar nos assistindo já. O recado importante é, primeiro, o sério, né? Não somos um canal oficial do Osho, né? Deixamos bem claro, não temos nenhum vínculo com a Fundação Osho Internacional, nenhum. Somos apenas um grupo de amigos independentes que gosta de contar histórias.
Histórias com hoje.
Exatamente. Mais um
Melhor que
recado
legenda.
importante. Outra coisa, esse vídeo que a gente vai passar, ele já tem legendas em português. Tá? Já estão na gravação, já quando nós reproduzimos, ele já vem com legenda em português, que é o trabalho que o HcO faz. Então, se aparecer outra legenda por cima, em qualquer outra língua, inglês ou qualquer outra, você tem que desativar no seu aparelho, desativar legendas automáticas, porque às vezes o Facebook faz isso. Então, como já tem legenda, vai ficar uma sobre a outra. Então, saiba que é no seu aparelho que você desconfigura, né? Que mais? Também o Facebook tem oscilações de transmissão, às vezes pode dar travamento, às vezes pode ficar meio ruinzinho de ler a legenda. Se acontecer isso, fique firme, stay put, que a gente no dia seguinte coloca no YouTube bonitinho, editado, com as legendas originais, se acontecer. Mais algum recado?
E essas oscilações, às vezes, ficam um tempo, depois estabiliza, né? Então, isso tem a ver com as transmissões, tanto daqui quanto de quem está recebendo também. Mais algum recado? Não.
Eu acho.
Divirtam-se, apertem os cintos e vamos descobrir juntos como é que surgiu a Rosa Mística. Ah, entre outras histórias fantásticas,
Outras histórias tão legais que a gente vai
especiais
assistir
para mim.
com a Leela. Já faz um ano que a gente entrevistou ela, agora só que conseguimos botar essa entrevista no ar. Foram muitas gravadas ao mesmo tempo, então hoje chegou o dia da Leela. Estou tentando abrir aqui, mas vamos lá então, Didi.
Bora?
A Mina,
A Mina Didi. Gente, no final a gente aparece para dar um oi, tá bom? Ou um tchau, na verdade. Beijo.
até já. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, welcome, Leela.
Welcome.
Thank
That's
you.
nice. That's nice to have you here with us in Histórias com Osho. So, the first question we ask everybody, how did Osho come into your life and what happens next?
Okay. So let me start by saying that we are at the very end of February now in the year 2023. And in 1973, I came to Osho as a young woman of 32. This is 50 years now.
Wow.
And I've been it's wonderful that I've been gifted this wonderful situation in my life. Yeah, so that's very important for me to say right away before I start because I have to go very far back in the story of my connection with Osho, which actually happened when I was born in South Africa and I had my family and everything living there. And then in the year 1972, we left South Africa to go to England. And very shortly after our arrival, within a month or so, the timing was just amazing because I had been trying that we leave earlier South Africa. But in retrospect, looking back, it is now clear that the timing had to be at exactly this time because within a month I came in contact with a man called Shame Singer, who was a sannyasin and a healer, an acupuncturist man. And he had just opened a center in the city of London. And I had hardly been in London, and boom, next thing I'm recommended to go to see him. And in turn, after a few sessions with him, I'm recommended to go and do this this meditation, he says to me. And I said, I don't know, what is I don't know anything about meditation. And he said, never mind, in his very Indian accent, you just go. This will do you more good than I can do you. So off I went, and there in this underground little tunnel somewhere in Marylebone, London, was the first center called Nirvana. It was the very first center that ever opened sort of anywhere, because Osho was still living at that time in a flat in Bombay. So it was very early days yet. And so there were just a few people there in the middle of London in freezing cold February, wearing just a few people with very bright orange robes. And this strange meditation that I had been sent to do called the dynamic. Being a very, I would say, sort of not in contact with the wider world, coming from South Africa, where we had no television and we had a very racist society government, I was very naive. So in a way, I really came on the obvious level through the mind as an quite innocent. And I was suffering with asthma a lot in my life. So every time I tried to do the dynamic, I got an asthma attack. And it took me, the strangest thing was that when I look back on it, I thought, how strange to continue to come every day and have another attack after 5 minutes and not be able to do the meditation. And yet I came back the following day. What made me come was beyond mind. That was all I could say. And in years that we look back on our life with Osho, we know so many things that we were led. It was not something we decided through our minds, because logically I would have just said, I can't do this, sorry, it doesn't work for me. But it didn't even come into question. So eventually, after much struggle and them stopping burning incense and everything, I began to do dynamic. And it was just very shortly after that time, and having done, it was the only meditation there was. And in the center, there was only 2 little books that were published in India. One was called The Gateless Gate, and the other one was called, I can't think of it now. The Path, oh, wait a minute, The Pathless Path and I Am the Gate. Those were the 2 little books. And I remember reading these books with awe. And it was as if just many things began to resonate within me. Seeing pictures of Osho had a very strong impact on me before anything else. Then there was the discourses that were being played. There were English discourses as well. And so from that time very soon after, I was very anti this whole taking sannyas thing. I thought it was just ridiculous, people wearing necklaces and bright orange robes. And I was very against uniformity and, fitting in with just the usual, being one of the sheep of life, so to speak. And then one day I left my family and I said, I've got to go and do a meditation. And off I went on my long journey across London and went and did the meditation. And for some reason afterwards, I didn't leave. I just went into a back room, little office room, and I sat down in front of a very big picture just like this, of his face, Osho's face. And I just sat there and I just looked at that picture, and it was just an emptiness. I didn't know why I was sitting there other than what I was feeling inside. I had a kind of a nervous energy. And then Veena, who was running the center with Shyam Singer at that time, came into the room and sat next to me. And out of my mouth came the words, "I want to take sannyas." And I got such a shock when I heard myself say it, because I had no intention of taking sannyas through this one, through the mind. And I had assured my husband that, he's wonderful, but these people, they look ridiculous in their orange robes, da-da-da-da-da-da. So there I was. And then Veena got up and left the room, came back with a mala, and she put it over my head, there and then. And at that moment, I had the first of what was to be many, but as we all do, an experience that was simply unbelievable. I just completely broke into laughter and tears, and it went on for at least an hour. I was in what one would call just complete overwhelm. I didn't have the mind at that time to think what's going on. I was so in it. I was just in it. That was all that was happening. So when I calmed down, I went home and revealed to my husband that I had taken sannyas, and from there my journey began.
And what's the meaning of your name?
Now that's an important thing, because in one of these books that I was reading in the center, there were a few Hindi words that were there in between the English ones, like Sachitanand, Satori, I didn't know what they meant. I mean, it took me a while to even be able to pronounce Osho's Rajneesh Bhagwan, Rajneesh Sri. I couldn't get it. And in one of the books particularly was the word, life is just a Leela. It's just a cosmic play. And every time I came across that word, I got this big feeling in my heart, really like, oh, that's a wonderful, and it sounded so perfect. Life is just a play, So it resonated very deeply with me. So then finally, when I decided to take sannyas, Veena and I went to Marylebone Station, and we sat in one of these machines that takes your picture, automatic, that ones with the little curtain. Do you have that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that in your country. And so we got a little photograph of me with long hair and an orange band already around my hair, and sent it for my sannyas in order to take sannyas. So I took sannyas by mail. And then the name came Ma Prem Leela, and it means the cosmic play of love.
Wow.
The play of love. So that's what my name means.
That's so beautiful.
Leela, Leela.
Life is just a play. Now, Kirti in the ashram used to sing this song to me every time he passed me on the path. Every time. He nearly drove me mad. Leela, Leela. Life is, and they used to sing it in Buddha Hall as well, of course. Very sweet. So that was the beginning. And then, of course, do you want me to go on, or do you want to ask me another question?
Sure.
Okay, so then I was a sannyasin, and I have two beautiful children, and there was no difficulty with them. I've always had I think, in this case, I could say they were my fellow travelers. I always feel that it's just not they're my children, I'm their mother. For me, my perception is my kids were very much fellow travelers. And this has happened also right into their adult life. So that there was just a very easy harmonic with what I was doing. And I think the changes that I was going through as a result of doing dynamic as well, just that one meditation started to really make absolutely transformative effects already, just doing this simple this simple meditation in a very short time. Things just kind of would pop out of my mouth, and I would start being much more assertive, more truthful, more in responding rather than reacting to things. I felt more courageous because I was quite well conditioned in my family home as a child. You didn't get much opportunity to speak up for yourself as teenagers and people, younger people can do today. So there was a lot that's already, layers were sort of releasing, repressed layers were releasing through this meditation. And I tell you, I went for it. I got so good at doing dynamic that at some point I would just breathe the whole way through to the silence. I would just keep breathing. Because for me, the catharsis and everything else was just, yeah, I've done that now. Now I can just do the breathe, and I loved it. I would just breathe and breathe and breathe and dance and breathe. All through the freak out, I would just keep breathing like mad and moving around. I had my own way of interpreting the dynamic. So then, okay, so then comes the next stage, and that is that we're living, there was all kinds of things in between, which is not of interest to anybody. I worked in London, and then I joined my whole family. I mean, the children were going now to a multiracial school. But the whole family, we finally moved to a centre in Suffolk, which is north of London, in the Midlands. And that was one of the places that Shyam Singh opened, and it was a big seminar house. And so we all lived there. The children went to the school nearby. And we stayed, yeah, this is now 1970, about 1977, 78. And I had been a sannyasin for about 2.5 years, I think. And I suddenly said, listen, I need to go now. I need to go and have a trip. And I went for a 5-week visit to Pune to meet Osho Bhagwan, as he was then called, for the first time. So off I went on my little journey. Actually, this was before the center that we moved to. I went on this trip before. I'm getting my timeline a bit mixed up here. And so I took a flight to Pune. My family stayed, my husband and my children stayed in London. And Veena was in Pune at that time, so she was there and, very happy to see me. And so I went for about 5.5 weeks just to go, and it was very new. There was some cloth tent over in the front garden, and we all did our meditations on grass mats on the sand. And it was the 10-day meditation camps. That's sort of the way it was happening. There was no Buddha hall. That was an empty field with a big concrete thing in the middle of it where people would throw all the garbage. But basically, the ashram was a lot smaller. And that was amazing. So the first day I arrived, Veena got me set up to go to darshan that very night. And I was very jet lagged, of course. So whatever was going on was okay because I was a bit jet lagged. And you know how you can be a bit sort of spaced out when you're jet lagged. So then what happens is now where Osho used to meet us was in the area where his car used to get parked in later years. It was just as you came into the real entrance of the house, in the Lao Tzu house. It was a small little what can I say, entrance area, and he would sit up on a few stairs. There was a little open area, and then we would sit up there with him. And I remember walking down the drive. So now it's my first meeting, physical meeting with Bhagwan. And I am so nervous. I'm absolutely peeing down my legs. I can feel. I'm beside myself. I'm so nervous. And I've had all the fantasies of what it would be like to meet Osho, you know, from something terrible to something wonderful. I couldn't imagine, but I had all gone through every possibility, as the mind does, you know, something momentous in your life is about to happen. So I am hanging back. So the last one in the line is only 12 people. That's all. 12 people coming into this little darshan. And I come round the corner and everybody's kind of gone in, and I come round the corner and I just catch a glimpse of him. I thought he would come after we were sitting down. I don't know why I imagined that, but there he was. And I just let out the most, I remember just bending over and putting my hands on my belly and bellowing like a buffalo. I was hit with an energy so powerful. It was overwhelming. And I put my hands right on my hara and wah, wah, and I'm like, so I didn't have all this bliss and stuff. I was just bombed out completely. And I just cried. I was completely overwhelmed. I cried the entire time. So anyway, we get there, we sit down, I sit next to Lakshmi. Everybody's sitting, and I have got no tissues with me. I've got a dress of Venus on in orange. And I'm sitting there blowing my nose because I'm still crying, you know, sort of quietly. I'm crying quietly, but I can't stop it. So I've got my head down. I'm sitting and I'm using her dress. So the dress gets completely full of snot and tears. And this is my first meeting with Osho. So finally, he talks to everyone personally, and I'm now the last one. And so I'm so unaware. So Lakshmi gives me a little push so that you come and sit in front of him when he talks. Because I was a little bit to the side, so she pushed me to sit in front of him. And he said to me, as if he didn't know, "What is your name?" And I said, "It's Leela." And everybody burst out laughing because they knew what it meant. But here I was in this kind of state. Anyway, he asked a little about what I had been doing. And I said, I've been working in the center with Osho and with Shyam Singer. And just slowly got me talking and quieting me down with a few questions. And then it was just, I can't remember all the whole thing, but it was just it was beautiful if I can look at it now. It's all very perfect, but I was in a state of complete overwhelm. That's all I can say. I was in something I could not describe. My connection to Osho has always been very energetic on many levels, as you'll find out as you talk with me about different parts. So everything, my taking sannyas, my first meeting with Osho, was all very strong energy reactions, very powerful. And that was my first meeting. And then I stayed for a few days. And then he said, oh, right. I stayed there for a few weeks. And it took me a few days to calm down from that first meeting with Osho at that time. And he said to me, how long are you staying? And I said, well, I'm due to leave in a few days. And he thought for a minute, and then he said, you change your ticket and you do this one group before you go. I think I had told him that I had encountered quite some fear, and that's what prompted him to say. And so that was the first group that was ever run in Pune. It was called the Enlightenment Intensive, which is now known as who was in. But in those days, it was called, the question was, tell me who you are. So that was a 3-day group. He said, you stay a bit longer and you do this group before we do. So there we went, 12 of us were in the group. That was mind-blowing for me. It was such a profound experience. Many people didn't enjoy it. I know that because, well, that's them. For me, it was started off as answering the question. And what I noticed was that every time somebody asked the question, in this format, it's 2 people sit opposite each other, and this is just for your viewers, and one asks the question and the other one answers. And this person just sits quietly and listens, no reaction or interaction. And you just keep answering for those 15 minutes, and then it changes over and the opposite happens. So there I was sitting, and then we would change partners throughout the day as well. So for the first day and a half, I was very aware that every time I was asked the question, tell me who you are, I would do a somersault in my mind because I had to get information from my memory. And then I started to say who I thought I was. That's what I realized I was talking. Anyway, so about lunchtime on the second day, I suddenly had an idea. I'm sick of hearing myself. I'm so bored with hearing myself saying the same thing over and over. I'm also a little bit sick of hearing everybody else's same story over and over, but I can't change what they say, but I can change what I say. So then I suddenly decided, I'm going to say only positive things about myself. And then in understanding that and getting that insight, I realized, my God, we're so negatively orientated. The whole thing is just all about, and it's just so bloody miserable and serious. Anyway, I changed my game. That's what I did. I started to say things about myself that I liked. I said, I like to dance. I said, I'm a great dancer and I enjoy dancing. It's just wonderful. And I love to sing. In fact, when I ran out of things that were true, I made up a few things just to keep the conversation going, because you had to do a lot of talking in these 3 days. And by the end of that day, I tell you, I was so uplifted and so in such a humorous mood, I couldn't stop laughing. And at some point I had a complete laughing attack, so much so that I actually fell backwards on the floor and just let myself have this, it was just coming, this big laughter. And then Garimo, who was the therapist or the facilitator of the group, came up to me and she said, try to stay with the process. And that set me off even more, because when you're in this absurdity state, that's the last thing you can do, is to try and pull yourself together from such laughter. Anyway, the outcome and the more relevant thing was that this process made me realize that I didn't have a clue who I was. I knew who I wasn't, but I didn't know who I was. And that left me with a very profound and deeper sense of seeking, because I had that seeking within me always, and even as a child. I had the question, is this all it's about? When I was looking at families and the interaction and the fights and the troubles, and there seemed to be nothing glorious, or is this all you do with life? So what Osho would call the divine discontent was already, I came with it. I didn't know it consciously, but it was there. It was there from basically my arrival. And so for the next months back in England, I had to go through a very quiet and personal existential crisis, because here I was, this person. I'd heard all the stuff about who I thought I was, but I didn't know where to begin to sort out who I was. I just tried to be as more genuine and more loving and more gentle. I didn't quite know. Anyway, then that time came when we moved to the center in Suffolk. We were there for some years. And the day came where suddenly I just said, I have to go now. And this was 1979. I have to go because Veena had often written to me from early days when she was on a farm somewhere in India. This was after the center, and said she had spoken to Osho about me, and he had said, tell her to come. Now I had 2 children, and for me, there was no possibility to leave these children and my husband and go. That was not going to happen. Somehow that was not in my nature to leave my children. So by the time 1979 happened, my son was 14 and my daughter was 16 going on 17. And the whole family was sannyasin at this time. My son decided to take sannyas very early, shortly after I came back from India. And my daughter took sannyas. She phoned me up one day at work when I was working. She says, I've decided to take sannyas. I said, oh, well, you have to write it. I've written the letter and I've sent my photograph. I've done it all. Boom, boom, boom. Very matter of fact. And then there we were. And then finally, my husband also became a sannyasa. So we were actually a whole family of sannyasins. And then we took off in 79. We rented our little flat in London that we had, and that gave us the money to live on. And we all took off. And we arrived in India at the very beginning of 1979. That's what happened next. Maybe I should stop and let you ask me questions. Otherwise, you can see I can just talk.
And could you tell us more about your life as sannyasi? Did you went to the ranch?
I worked in Pune in the press office when all the journalists were coming in Pune 1, as we call it, with Krishna Prem and with Bhagwati, and many people who were there in the press office from all the languages of different countries, all working together. And my job was sometimes to take the journalists to discourse and to show them around the ashram, and also was the sort of coordinator of the press office. So that was my responsibility. That's what I did in Pune 1. And then at some point came 1981, I think it was around June, when Osho got in his car and disappeared out of his ashram. It wasn't that the people were trying to leave the ashram, the guru left. And there we were. I was called, just before he left, I was called by somebody to come and go around the corner to that very place where the car was parked, where I actually met Osho for the first time. And she said, just wait here. And then about 4, 5, 6 other people came. Soon there was about 10 of us. We're just standing there. We have no idea what's going on. The next thing, Osho comes out and he greets us all very beautifully. He gets in the car and then he drives out. And then we all are asking what's going on. And soon we realized that Osho has apparently left for America because he needs to see to his health for whatever reasons they were given. Okay, so then shortly afterwards, my daughter then became connected with a young man after some time. I mean, she was now 17 and a half. And my son, my husband, and I left Pune and went back to South Africa and ran a center there for just on a year. Then we left South Africa and we came back to England and we lived at Medina. And while we were at Medina, the very big center in Suffolk in England, which had a good few hundred sannyasins living and working there, the ranch happened in America. And I got the opportunity to go for 3 months on what was called RHD, I don't know what that means. And so my son was now off with his new girlfriend and working. He was an 18-year-old by this time. And my daughter was still, they had moved into their lives. So I went for 3 months. My husband remained at Medina, and I was at the ranch. And I remember when driving up in one of these buses from Portland to the ranch, and we arrived at this little town. I can't remember the name. It's a small little few houses, not even a town. And there's all these American people who live there looking at us like, what the hell? What are you doing here, in our territory? So I looked at them and I thought to myself, what the hell are we doing here? This just seemed like, what? Anyway, we went down and the ranch was beginning. The job that I had at the ranch was to be the mama for the welding shop to start with. And I worked with a lot of men and it was great. We had a lot of fun, but it always felt, the context felt wrong. You know what I mean? The context, like this, what are we doing in America? That question didn't go away for a long time. It just always, what are we doing here? Everything was growing so big, the hall was enormous, thousands of people. I felt, for me, it was a bit of a disconnect. I didn't feel the intimacy and the connection that I had felt into it. It felt weird. And it felt like that the whole time I was there, for me. Other people were perfectly having the greatest time of their life, driving trucks and building and yay. And for me, it was like, I'm not here for this. This is not what I'm here for. Anyway, so then they changed and I moved into the legal department, which was even more difficult for me to be in. And I would say that in a sentence, really, my time in Oregon was by and large really difficult for me. I did not fit in. I did not like the rules and the whole story that evolved out of it. I questioned it constantly. I was always told everything's fine, you're wonderful, everybody loves you, it's great. My intuition told me something is just seriously off. And I didn't know why. And I got to a point where I just kind of had a bit of a breakdown one night. And I went home to the little A-frame that I was living in, the house that we were. And I just said, I have to go. I don't seem to fit here. I have to leave. And I was having this conversation with Osho and me from my heart. I don't fit here. There's something here that I'm not in accord with. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not part of. I don't feel connected to it. I love the people that I was close to, and I was having a good time. But it was just intuitively, I could feel it was just something was really good. And then 2 days after I'd had this breakdown and sort of cry and just say, and then the night that I was having this, I thought to myself, how do I get out of here? I mean, how do I leave? So I'm now thinking, how do I get out of here? I don't just walk up to a bus stop and say, oh, I'm leaving, guys. Everything was so secretive at this very end stage. 2 days later, the whole thing fell apart. I was called to whatever it was called, Buddha Grove, and where all the mamas were living in this big fancy house. And then we came to know that they were all leaving on the planes from the ranch. And I just stood there in a kind of, I was like a stunned state, like, I will never, after sitting in the office, in the press office with friends, we were all sitting in a bit of shock, right? Because this whole thing where Osho had told them to leave, and I just sat there and I thought, I will never mistrust my intuition again, because I knew there was something really not correct here. Anyway, there were many incidences, but too many to talk of now. And so they left, and I had a friend. I was connected with a man called Indivar. He was a doctor, and he and I had looked after the people that had been separated from the main group of people living at the ranch for the fact that they had AIDS. And I was sort of asked to be their therapist, or, their counselor, I could say, because I was not a therapist at all, other than doing massage, which I had been doing for many years anyway. And he was their doctor. So then he started to arrange for making it possible for these people to get back to the countries where they had come from. And so we knew them very well. They were lovely people, and they'd been a little bit ostracized or kept separate for health reasons. Anyway, and then shortly after that, I left the ranch and went back to London. And I started offering massage trainings. Poonam, who was a therapist in London, and I got connected with her again. And very shortly after that, I spent, I think, a year in London. And then as soon as Osho finished his worldwide tour and came back to India, very soon after that, I was back in Pune in 78, 77. And I went back to Pune. So that was my little escapade with America.
I think you meant 87.
87.
Oh, 87, I beg your pardon. 87. Yeah, we get the.
So then started the Pune 2 days.
Pune 2.
Now things changed, you see. So I arrived, and Turia, who I of course knew now as one of the therapists from Pune 1, saw me as I came in to the ashram. Early days of Pune 2. And she said to me, would you like to join the group department? Can you do massage? Because they were just looking for people to do things. I said, yes, all right. And that was fine. And then it was really very early days. Again, I had actually said to Indivar when we were on the ranch, I suddenly had a flash one day. We're going back to India. And when? I said, I don't know when, but I know I'm going to go back to India. Here we were, back in India. There was Lao Tzu House. There was Buddha Hall, all waiting for us. It was like, thank God, thank goodness that episode, whatever that was about, the learning for so many of us, we all took out of it what was necessary for us. So I began doing massage, but after a while in the Pune heat, doing massage every day, just sit with a little fan going, it was unbearable. And I wasn't meeting anybody. I was not having any contact, verbal. It was like a silent massage with people, and then you do that all day, and by the end of the day, you're exhausted doing it under very difficult conditions, So I went to see Turia and I said, look, I've had a word with Bhagwati, my friend, who is working in the book distribution department of Osho's books, selling them. I said, I'm not going to do the massage anymore. It's too exhausting for me. And I said, and I'm not meeting anybody. And I said, yeah, so it's just like a wooden table. They've got wooden little boxes in front of them with cards in them for people to book their sessions and da da da. This is now the group department. So I said to Chave, you know, because like in Pune 1 and in America, we had a big multiversity. I said, this is not the way we need to represent Osho. You need to get someone to set up a whole thing properly, really get the whole group department organized. And I said, and also, can I just mention that it's been quite strange for me to come back to Pune 2 and I mentioned that a lot of the therapists, people who I knew, you know, from Pune 1, and I was actually, I suppose, a little bit older than most of them, not all of them, but there was not a connection. And I said, I sometimes feel that you guys stay in a sort of very groupy situation, and I would really love it if it was just a bit more open. I mean, they were busy with their work and all kinds of things. So I suppose I was just putting out a way to connect with people that I knew from before, because there was not that many yet in the ashram. Anyway, she said, oh, that's interesting. She said, well, I'd like you to give this feedback and I'll get the people into the room. And she suggested that they come, the people I had mentioned, and also the feedback about the group department and what ideas I might have for how it should be done. So I said, okay, you know, it was her suggestion. We got into the room, I think the following day or something, and I expressed my feeling that, you know, I wish that we could have more connection. I was just somebody that they came into for, you know, information. Anyway, so I mentioned about how I thought that the group department needed enlarging and to get more set up and be done a bit better. And I said, yeah, that I had sort of, you know, wanted to connect more with you all, but I was feeling a bit sad that it was like there was no interest. That was a personal thing that I had going. In a way, I'm a people person, and in another way, I'm also very happy with my own space. So I left and I went to work with the book distribution. And then Garima approached me and said that Chave had spoken with her and would I be willing to set up the group department, because the ideas that I had mentioned sounded okay. And so that's what happened next. Then I became the coordinator of the group department in Pune 2. And we started from a wooden table with boxes with cards to creating the huge plaza, the creation of all the marble, how it should look, la 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 la. And that was also part of finding group rooms in houses and creating. It was a huge job. It was fantastic. And getting all the equipment together into the rooms, and all more people were coming all the time. And so we had a huge program of therapy and meditation classes going on in Buddha Hall, daily meditations, many different genres of therapy were available. And it became, again, the largest growth and therapy center in the world. That's what this place was. This wasn't some kind of, you know, religious, you know, you've got to believe in this and believe in that. This, when people came because they wanted to transform their lives. They wanted to become more aware and awake. And that was the place that this could happen. It had the potential. So then what we have again is everyday beautiful discourses with maybe silent, recorded ones in the morning and Osho in the evening. Sometimes Osho was talking, I can't remember if he was talking in the morning and evening at times. But the setup was him coming out and just pouring this insight, the wisdom, the clarity, the enormity of his compassion. And he was so funny and so human in the way he did it. It was just to sit in that presence, in the energy of what we were all collectively enjoying or feeling or whatever. It was an energy field of so unique and so unusual. And you could just sit and feel this light or this love or this clarity just falling upon you every time he would come out. There would be ahas going on in you, or, oh my God, is that for real? Insights about yourself, insights about the world at large. It was such a volume of alternative perception to what we had growing up as people. And so on a daily basis, and then there's the collective of all of us working and without saying a thing to each other about, you know, oh, I'm so glad I'm here every day. Nothing like that. It was an unspoken gratitude. And it rubbed off on so many of us, the love, the grace that he brought, always the perfection, the playfulness that he would do with the music when he would come into Buddha Hall. Then he would blast us with insights. All he talked about were past masters. It was about the people who had brought value to this life over the centuries, and to explain what they were teaching and to explain their different insights or techniques or whatever. I mean, there had been nobody to the volume and to the enormity of what Osho delivered. I mean, it's just impossible to say, you know, and for people to say it was a cult, it was exactly the opposite. It was something that was freeing and enlightening and opening and expanding perception and gratitude. Gratitude for me has been the most enormous thing that I have in relation to Osho. Overwhelming gratitude.
Yes. And speaking about that and about group department, I was in Pune. I arrived in April '88, and I had a ticket to go back to Brazil. But people asked me to go for a group which Osho just spoken about, that was called the Mystic Rose. And that changed my life. I didn't go back to Brazil after that group. So I remember Osho speaking the first time about Mystic Rose in Buddha Hall in discourse. And he said, you were in charge of helping him to create.
This is what he said. I have chosen Leela, one of my therapists. And I remember sitting there and I had such an attack in my heart, like, what? I'm a therapist. What? And immediately it was like, oh, that he's talking about me. Yeah, to create a new meditative therapy, yeah.
Yes, could you tell us?
He said, I'll be in charge. I should be in charge of it.
Yes, tell us about that.
So I'm now running the group department in the sense of coordinating it. I think Turiya and another sannyasin were the heads, but they were in the groups all the time. So I was actually the person just had to, if I had some details that needed to go to Osho, I would just speak with them about it or just whatever. But basically I was full-time organizing the sessions, seeing that people's group rooms were set up, that there was enough equipment, everything had to get done. And then one day I got a call to come to Lao Tzu Gate, and it was Ananda, Osho's secretary, who said, I have something for you. And I said, what is it? And she said, never mind, just come. And it was a bit of humor in her voice. So I come to Laotse Gate and I'm standing, and she comes out with this typed page. And on it is an introduction to 2 weeks of what is to be called the Mystic Rose meditation. And I read through this, 1 week of laughter, 1 week of crying. And I look at her and I said, what is this? And she said, this is what it is. And then I turn the page and it says, person to be running it, Leela. So then I think to myself, why me? Anyway, all of this gets explained later, but that was it. There I've got the instruction that there's a 2-week meditation to be called Mystic Rose, and Osho wants me to create and develop it, basically. Okay, so I go back to the office, the group office, and I say, look at this, guys, look what I've been given here. And they read it, and we all just start getting like, wow, that's it's so, how do you do this? And we're all chatting about it, you know. Anyway, that was the beginning. And then, so I decided to do a rehearsal. So one night, shortly after discourse, I said from the residents, any of you guys want to come? We need to try it out. Anyway, there were so many people, we couldn't fit them all in the room. We were only 40 people in this room that we had at the time. And we had a rehearsal I said, we do it for an hour, the laughing, so that I can get some idea of what it feels like, you know, to just do laughter without any talking, laughing at nothing in particular. And for 2 nights we did that. And it was mind-blowing because there was so much interaction and people were having such a good time. Many people who you see around the ashram, you wouldn't think they would ever get into doing half the stuff they were, you know, just maybe looked a bit serious, but boy, when they let go of something else, it was fantastic. But it was a lot of interaction. And I just sat there looking at this and thought, oh my God, how do I do this for 3 hours every day for a week? Anyway, so then I wrote to Osho and I said, there was a lot of interaction, you know, almost over the top. People were doing all sorts of things, coming up with all kinds of repression expressions, you know, expressions of repressions. That's what made them laugh, sort of thing. But only doing it in expression of what they were playing with, what they were setting up in this situation. And he said, well, interaction is not needed. No interaction. So, okay. So then finally the groups began. And the very first day I walked into Mystic Rose, my first group in the morning. And I looked at everybody sitting there and I said, well, Osho said we should laugh, so let's laugh. That was my first introduction. I didn't have anything more to say. And I didn't pretend to have anything more to say. But what I could do was like laugh. So all of us just lay down and we just laughed. Because in that permissive energy of being around Osho, we were willing to try out all kinds of things. And it wasn't like, oh, we can't do this or we can't do that. We were ready to try anything at all. That was quite okay. And this sounded quite wonderful. And there we did. We lay on our mattresses and we laughed our heads off. And people were laughing with each other and interacting, but not talking and making signs and being playful. But I don't know if you've been in the group before, but you'll know it, what it's like. And then, so that's how it all started. And slowly, then we had the second week. And then we came to see that people at the end of the crying week were so vulnerable still and so open from releasing all of the sorrow and the grief of repressed so much repressed pain that I suggested, I wrote to Osho and I said, could we have just a few days of meditation at the end to just let things settle? Boom, we got another week. So that's how the third week started.
Wow.
And then, so basically, the way that I set it up was that I would do the meditation in the beginning, mainly myself, but then quite soon other people had to start also learn to facilitate it, because I couldn't do it and run the group department every day and every month. So slowly it began to grow, and other people began to facilitate it. And I will just show you, if you can see, I have this book here, which is a book that I've written and published this year.
Wow.
And it's called Mystic Rose Meditative Therapy, a revolutionary process of healing and transformation through laughter and tears, with Leela. And then on the back is a quote by Osho and by me.
Wow.
And this is about how the whole process, because it came to my attention many years ago that I needed to leave a historic record of how this process, because this is about his work. And then not only did I get the Mystic Rose, I also got born again and no mind. I got 3 processes that he wanted me to run. And then very soon afterwards, he also requested that I do trainings. So then I had to start developing trainings. And so for the last 33 years, I had been running Mystic Rose so many times constantly in the ashram. And then I asked his permission if I could take it to the centers in the West, to run it there at all the Osho centers around wherever they would want it. And Germany became, I would say, the greatest. First, it was interesting that many of the sannyasis that came, most of them were German to be with Osho. And then of all the countries that I worked in, Germany was the one where most response came to do the Mystic Rose in the centers. And it was fantastic. It was fantastic to be able to offer this also to people who were in their working life, not just coming to the ashram. And then I also offered Born Again, No Mind, and that went on for years. And I've done over, I don't know how many, over 100 Mystic Roses in my life. I participated in many of them fully. I was there laughing with the people. And after about maybe 10 years, I began to sit and just laugh, but also to keep an eye as the groups got bigger. Yeah, so that's how it came into being. And then after Mystic Rose came, then came Born Again. And then I had to create that, and also realized that it's all about energy. These, as I've said to you, this whole thing for me is, I realized later, not in early days, I have a very, and this happened in my massage as well, when I was giving sessions and also teaching, which I did for 27 years, that I could work above the body. I could work in the energy field. I could work in the chakras. That I had some previous knowledge, I would say, from a past life. I don't know, but I understand and I feel energy quite naturally. I don't know if it was there. And I had also, before Mystic Rose was created, I'll tell you how I think I came to get it, because that was a question. How did you get Mystic Rose? And what I understand happened was that at some point, Nilam called me to Natsu House and said that early morning, she called me there, and I thought, oh God, I'm running through, what's wrong now? Has somebody freaked out? What's happened? So anyway, I went, and she said, you need to come and give Osho a massage. He needs some work on his body, and he doesn't want to do any walking particularly. And I thought, okay. And then began a series of massage sessions where I would go into the room where the table was set up, and Nando and Osho's doctor, Amrita, would be there, and they would be present. And I would give him a 2-hour massage. Not like full body. I mean, in the beginning, you work also on the back, the legs, and the arms. And I did that for a period of maybe 2 weeks. And then I had to leave because I had to go and do a visa. Can you believe it? I'm sorry,
Wow.
a visa situation. Anyway, and that was in the March of '88. And shortly afterwards, the Mystic Rose, a month or so afterwards, Mystic Rose discourse began. And then I think he was talking with Ananda that he had created this, and he said, well, who could we have to run this? And she said, they went through a list of people apparently, and she said, they didn't come up with a name. I think all the therapists were busy, because they were, doing their various jobs. And she said, well, I'll ask Leela, meaning as head of the therapy of the group department, who would be appropriate, you know, that's what she meant. And he said, the one who gave me the massage. And she said, yes. He said, she can do it. That's how I got Mystic Rose.
Wow.
What that means in the big picture of anything, you know, everything
So-
around this beloved man was, who knows?
That's great. I never had the opportunity, so I say to you, thank you very much. It has just changed my life.
Yeah, but it was all his, you know, it was hard for me because lots of people would come after the group so full and thank me. And I would say, yes, but it's his work that's done this. You know, I'm just, yes, but you know, thank you for bringing it. So eventually I had to be big enough to just say it's a pleasure. And it is a beautiful process. It changed my life completely. That's a whole nother story, but I don't have energy to write another book.
How can we find your book? Amazon?
On Amazon.
Amazon. Okay, great.
It's also, you would have to get, it's English, and you would also have to get, you can get it on a Kindle.
Kindle also.
Kindle also got it, yeah. Yeah, so it's certainly available in Europe, not in Australia. The book is not available in Australia because they don't have the mechanism for quick printing, you see. So I don't know if you have it in South America. So that's how it has to be. And the whole story, honestly, is it's written really from the heart and very simple. People who read the books just love it because it's the whole story and how I developed and how I changed why I questioned Osho on various things about the group. Okay, what's your next question? Yeah. What do the love between master and disciple, how is it for you? I think I've communicated that quite well already. But all I can say on that is that my connection to Osho is as vital and intrinsic to this day and every day of my life. I don't feel that that it is over or it is gone. It is relevant and with me is the same as the air I breathe. My life is shaped in what I have experienced being with this remarkable being. And my gratitude is inexpressible. There's no way that you can thank somebody for this. It's too big. It's too big and I'm too little. My body and my mind, the bigness of me understands all, but you know, I mean, we live, our body lives within us. So the within us is full of gratitude. And the last question is, how do I see Osho and his legacy today? I have noticed lately on Facebook that many people, in the last since the time of this movie that was made about Osho in Oregon, I would say in the last year or so, suddenly there are so many more people offering Osho's work. I see people offering meditations in this center, whether it be meditative therapies, certainly a big part of it, but also there's been a complete surge. I don't know if you've noticed it. They're doing this group and that group, and everybody's advertising it. They come on my Facebook page so much, and I'm realizing that there seems to be currently a huge willingness to suddenly get going with meditations again. Whereas for a while, I suppose it was to do with COVID as well, but even before that, it wasn't anything like it. It's starting. There's more interest. There's more interest and energy to offer many of the things that people have themselves gained from being with him and now want to share it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I think I am now retired as far as travel is concerned. I'm now 82 years old. That's talking about the body. And so the traveling on the planes and everything is, unless I can travel first class for business, I don't think I can manage anymore. And my body is quite delicate. So I live in Australia. I have a beautiful little cottage that I live in my daughter's garden. She has a property of 4.5 acres. And she lives here, and some other sannyasin friends live in the main house, which they rent. And so we're like I'm very beautifully taken care of.
Okay.
Okay.
We would like to say thank you very much for
Very
these
much.
talks. We just love it. Okay.
And thank you for asking me. I'm always happy to talk about my life with Osho. It's
Okay.
my greatest gift
Mhm.
to have been with him. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Love you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, my loves.
Bye, love.
Bye bye.
Preciosidade, meu. Eu não lembrava de tantos detalhes dessa live. E que delícia, né? Essa entrevista e que riqueza, gente. Isso é muito especial, isso é muito único. Esse é o legado de hoje. Nu e cru e vivo. Queridos, bora nós?
Terça-feira que vem tem mais, né? Amina.
Né, Su?
Gente, boa noite. Obrigado pela presença. Terça-feira que vem a gente está aqui de novo. Beijos.
Beijos, até terça que vem.